Han Li responded to Nangong Wan's senior martial sister with an unhurried tone. It doesn't matter who I am, but it does matter why you are being so obstinate. Just give the con-training heart restriction medallion to us and we'll immediately release you. As for the Blood Devil sword, I have nothing to fear from it despite not knowing of it. It would be best if you didn't rely on it. The icy woman sinisterly stared at Han Li and curled her lips. You are overestimating yourself. If you knew about Blood Devil sword, you wouldn't dare to speak so boldly. I'll kill you first and see if junior martial sister Nangong changes her mind. Immediately after, she bit the tip of her tongue and puffed a large mist of blood essence onto the small crimson sword and clutched her hands in an incantation seal. In a bright flash of crimson light, the small sword grew to a meter in length, flourishing its wicked, bloody appearance. The scent of blood it emitted became all the more repugnant and pervasive as well. The icy woman then grabbed onto the sword's handle without much care, and she began to glare with brilliantly light as she began to pour the entirety of her spiritual power into the crimson sword. Quickly act! We cannot allow her to attack first. Unable to retain her calm, Nangong Wan shouted fearfully to Han Li. She knew much about the fissomeness of the Blood Devil sword and couldn't hold much confidence in Han Li's words. Before she could finish condensing her divine incarnation light, she pointed to the huge barrier of light above her head. The dome of light trembled and began to quickly revolve. A short moment later, a gorgeous emerald green light flew out towards the icy woman in an instant. When the icy woman saw this, she casually waved her hand and tossed out the triangular flag. When the flag left her hand, it turned into a large cloud of eerie green fog as it intercepted the attack. As soon as the ray of emerald light struck the green fog, a flood dragon suddenly appeared from the emerald light. The flood dragon suddenly gained the upper hand in the struggle and surged through the fog in an attempt to disperse it. But like a tenacious disease, a layer of the fog stuck onto the flood dragon and prevented it from breaking free. Nangong Wan grimaced at the sight, and the icy woman revealed a trace of joy. The icy woman then swept the air with the crimson sword and slashed the sword over Han Li's head. A spatial fluctuation soon followed, carrying a 3-meter wide wave of sword chi towards him. The sword chi was scarlet red and flaunted an ominous, evil aura as it cut forward without restraint. After the icy woman consumed a majority of her power in her attack, her complexion increasingly reddened several times in the following instant. Then in a flash of light, the crimson sword returned to its original small size. As the sword chi traveled through the air, the nearby spiritual chi flowed forward with the force of 1,000 streams, dragging the blood sword chi forward and concealing it. Han Li could only feel his body tense and suddenly felt his body shackled. Let alone cast any techniques, he couldn't even bring himself to move a single finger. He could only stare at the sword chi as it slowly made his way towards him. Nangong Wan's complexion turned deathly pale at the sight of this, and her senior martial sister simply smirked. Both of them believing that Han Li was about to meet great catastrophe, Han Li simply took a deep breath as he stared at the blood sword chi. With ringing thunder and wildly flickering golden light, a net of faint gold lightning appeared around Han Li. The icy woman was stunned at the sight. Before she could even react, the blood sword chi struck the net of lightning. A huge explosion sounded out as the divine lightning and the blood chi collided. Despite overbearing sword chi savage attempts to break through the golden net, it was incapable of severing the thin strands of lightning. Instead, the golden net gradually wrapped around it as if it were a fish. Then, the net of divine devil bane lightning around Han Li disappeared as it quickly moved to wrap around the sword chi. Han Li glanced at the lightning-restrained sword chi in the air with a trace of astonishment. The divine devil bane lightning appeared to be quickly consumed in its struggle to contain the sword chi despite its evil warding properties. Had he not released a third of his lightning reserves, it was quite possible he wouldn't have been able to restrain this wicked sword chi. Actually, this was the first time he had even encountered an evil devil Dao treasure that he hadn't been able to easily subdue with the devil bane lightning. But if this continued, both the blood sword chi and the devil bane lightning would likely both scatter. This wasn't something that he was going to allow. With that thought, Han Li raised his hands with a sullen expression, violently releasing 2 extremely dense bolts of lightning onto the net of lightning that was already restraining the crimson sword chi. With the reinforced vigor, the golden lightning was able to defeat the sword chi, leaving only a small cloud of crimson mist in the air. Without any further thought, Han Li pointed to the golden lightning in the air, and had it completely encase and condense the golden mist into a golden fist-sized ball. After it fell into his grasp, he expressionlessly glanced at the woman across from him. The scene had left the icy woman completely dumbstruck with completely disbelief on her face. Nangong Wan was also shocked to the point where her mouth was slightly hanging open. Seeing the full force of the Blood Devil sword rendered ineffective was beyond belief for the two women. Ever since this sword made its appearance in the Heavenly South, it was unknown whether or not it was an ancient or a magic treasure. This sword was similar to an ordinary magic treasure by which it can be kept within one's body, but it was incapable of refined by an owner like an ancient treasure. Despite this, it was still capable of displaying astonishing strength. Unless one avoided the sword's spatial slash ahead of time, there was no method of blocking it. Any techniques or magic treasures used to block the attack would most likely be cleaved into two. As for the sword's user, unless they used a large amount of blood essence and vitality to activate it, they would have to be wary of devilish chi backlash. This was because the body's true essence became increasingly tainted by devilish essence the longer the sword was used. If too much devilish essence was accumulated, one would experience devilish chi backlash. They would lose any rationality and transform into a raging devil until their death. There are only a few of these devilish artifacts in the entirety of the Heavenly South. It could be said to be a name that was both feared and admired. Just after Han Li dispersed of the blood sword chi, he took action without waiting for the two women to recover from their shock. With a fierce whistle, he had the gold-devouring beetle swarming above him roar and flood the room as they charged towards the icy woman. Han Li's had awakened the icy woman from her stupor. In furious alarm, she opened her mouth and spat out a small silver sword from her mouth and quickly formed an incantation gesture with her hands. The silver sword brilliantly shined and created a barrier of blinding silver light. With a sudden pop, the silver sword trembled and shot out over 1,000 strands of silver light towards in the incoming swarm of golden beetles from within the barrier. Sword condensed threads. Han Li muttered to himself with a frown. So it turned out that Nangong Wan's senior martial sister was originally a sword cultivator. It was no wonder why she had so many sword-type magic treasures. In the following moment, the silver thread struck the golden insect cloud. With a loud burst of crackles, countless golden shells fell from the sky, thinning out much of the swarm. Holes were left in the cloud of beetles from where the silver sword threads had struck. Han Li's heart sank at the sight. Were his current gold-devouring beetles still incapable of contending against nascent soul cultivators? He had spent such meticulous time and effort to develop them. The icy woman felt relief at the result of the strike. With several more waves of attacks, the entire swarm of these odd insects should be fully exterminated. It appeared there was nothing to fear from them. However, Han Li's disappointment was soon replaced with joy. The beetles that had fallen from the strike had begun to move once more. With a shriek, they began to fly once more and followed the rest of the beetles towards the icy woman. At that moment, a phoenix cry suddenly sounded out from the green fog, and a radiance of 1,000 suns suddenly shined and cleanly scattered it away to reveal of 1,000,000 moon from within it. The moon shimmered with light before rushing towards the icy woman's barrier. The icy woman's expression vastly changed. Suddenly, the light barrier began to spin around her and her body transformed into a streak of black-white light as she attempted to escape from the hall. After this exchange, the woman finally realized that it would be extremely difficult to take on Han Li and Nangong Wan together. As such, she decided to flee the cave residence and restrain the two once she gathered reinforcements. While Han Li and Nangong Wan were particularly formidable, they couldn't stand up to the countless disciples of the Masked Moon sect. And once she arrived outside, she'd be able to activate the Masked Moon sect's sect guarding formations and trap the two inside. Nangong Wan's Scarlet Moon was lagging behind in its attempt to chase her senior martial sister, granting her senior martial sister the opportunity to fly towards the ceiling and strike it. With a muffled thump, a red light pulsed from the ceiling, but it was unbroken. Only a few loose pieces of rock had fallen down. The icy woman was stunned. Before she realized what had happened, the roof flashed with light and swarms of black, gold, and silver beetles emerged from it. Buzzing, they quickly gathered at the room's center and formed a tri-colored shield. In the icy woman's alarm, she waved her hand without any further thought, summoning a silver talisman in between her fingers. When Nangong Wan saw this, she naturally knew what her senior martial sister planned to do. Her expression immediately sank and slapped her storage pouch rather than using the divine incarnation light. A small red flag appeared in her hand and she immediately flung it into the ground. The icy woman waved her hand and activated the talisman in her hand. The talisman flew from her hand enveloped in a ball of yellow light and streaked towards the ceiling like a shooting star. The yellow light broke through the huge shield as if nothing had been there and directly flew towards the hall's ceiling. But at that same moment, Nangong Wan had finished uttering an incantation and activated the hidden restrictions in her cave residence. The entire hall began to glow with a red light, surrounding all the surfaces in a barrier of blinding light, the ceiling included. As if a nemesis of the icy woman's shooting star, the shooting star immediately stopped moving once it struck the light barrier as if sealed onto it. A large expanse of red light then gathered and wrapped around it. Nangong Wan's senior martial sister was astonished by this sudden change, but as a greatly experienced cultivator, she immediately realized what restriction this was. She immediately flicked her finger with a sullen expression, launching a bone-chillingly cold white sword streak from her hand. It circled once around the enveloped talisman and quickly scattered the red light that imprisoned it. The icy woman was delighted by the result. In a flash of yellow light, she immediately flew towards the ceiling through the opening of the scattered red light. But as soon as she arrived halfway through the opening, purple light suddenly flashed before her. Something suddenly enveloped her and forcefully dragged her away from Hall's ceiling. With a light chuckle, a white silhouette appeared in a blur, revealing a white-clothed young woman. Silver Moon had suddenly appeared from the ceiling and was grasping a translucent purple thread in her hand. The other end of the purple thread led directly towards the icy woman's body. At that moment, Nangong Wan's senior martial sister discovered that her body was enveloped in a net of sparkling purple thread. The thread was nearly invisible to the eye. In the icy woman's furious alarm, she flicked her fingers without any further thought, shooting over 10 streaks of black-white sword chi. Soon after, she followed up by spitting out a dense green flame from her mouth onto the purple net. Purple light flourished from the net. But regardless of whether it be the green flame or the black-white sword chi, they were incapable of harming the purple thread in the slightest. The icy woman became truly flustered by the sight. Just as she resolved herself to consume a great amount of vitality to employ a secret technique, Silver Moon smiled and pulled on the purple thread, uttering the word, "Restrain." The originally loose net immediately tightened and completely fettered the icy woman, completely preventing her from making even the slightest movement. The woman's face grew blood red. Ever since she condensed a nascent soul, she had always been looked up to with respect. She had never been caught in a situation such as this one, especially ever since she entered mid-nascent soul stage. With shameful fury, a cold glint appeared in her eyes as her entire body magnificently shined with light. In a moment, the light violently surged to double its size and began to faintly contain a faint tinge of crimson. When Silver Moon saw this, her smile disappeared and she knew things wouldn't end well. But just as she commanded the purple cloud lace to release all of its Jade Sun True Fire, Nangong Wan sent her a voice transmission, "Do not harm her. Leave her to me." As soon as she said this, her vermilion moon flew up from below and enveloped the icy woman within it. The moon hurriedly revolved and it soon began to ripple, filling the hall with silhouettes of itself. As Han Li stared at the twirling moon from down below, he was shocked to find his mind completely shaken and his focus broken. It was no wonder why the icy woman felt so fearful towards Nangong Wan's divine incarnation light. After the moon revolved for the time it took to finish a cup of tea, Nangong Wan finally stopped, her face pale from exhaustion. Then with a wave of her hand, the vermilion moon scattered into starlight with a light bang. Her senior martial sister reappeared from within it as she floated in the air, still restrained by the purple cloud lace. However, the spiritual chi in her body grew completely calm and she remained unconscious with a strange smile on her face. "What is this?" Han Li bewilderedly said. With a bit of color returned to her face, Nangong Wan smiled. "Those trapped by my divine incarnation light are incapable of escaping it, even if they manifest their nascent soul. This technique also possesses an incredibly powerful bewitchment effect. My senior martial sister's mind had been lost to the divine light for a time being. This way, we are able to spare her." Han Li rubbed his nose and helplessly said, "It was no surprise your senior martial sister was so fearful of it. It is able to prevent even a nascent soul from manifesting. However, there would be no need to go through such troublesome methods if we didn't need to keep her alive. Lethal methods would been far easier." Nangong Wan sighed and forced a smile. "Exterminating my senior martial sister, the sect's Grand Elder, is unacceptable. Since I plan on following you, the Masked Moon sect will already suffer a blow to its strength. If we kill her as well, the sect will become crippled. The past Masked Moon sect Grand Elder had treated me with great kindness. Although I cannot sacrifice myself for the sect, I cannot bring myself to doom it to extinction." Han Li wryly smiled and said, "But your senior martial sister sure didn't treat you leniently when she attacked you and restricted you. That doesn't matter. Since I've spared her life, I can consider the debt to the sect's previous master repaid. I won't feel uneasy later when I've left with you." However, the last battle was truly dangerous. I truly didn't know that Senior Martial Sister had a heaven-defying devilish artifact such as the Blood Devil Sword. It nearly led to a disastrous outcome. Had I known of this earlier, Nangong Wan brightly flickered and she wore an apologetic expression. However, Han Li simply smiled and showed not the slightest concern of it. It's nothing. Wasn't he the Blood Devil Sword incapable of harming me either way? Anyhow, let us quickly acquire the restriction medallion and leave. Nangong Wan nodded her head in response. Silvermoon obediently shook her hand and unraveled the purple cloud lace from the icy woman. Nangong Wan took several steps forward and bluntly tapped several places on her Senior Martial Sister's body, placing several restrictions on top of it. She then reached out for the dark green storage pouch at her waist and gently shook it open. Then in a bright flash of light, a pile of items appeared on the floor. When Han Li saw this, he curiously walked over. The heart-constraining restriction medallion was quite easy to find. Nangong Wan quickly took it into her hands with a smile. As for Han Li, he quickly swept his gaze past the pile and suddenly beckoned a small exquisite ring into his hands. It was completely dark and lightless. Han Li frowned and brought the item to his eye and began to examine it. Nangong Wan astonishedly said, "What are you doing with that? It looks like just an ordinary magic tool." Han Li chuckled and suddenly slapped his storage pouch, summoning a jade box into his hands. The box then opened in a flash of azure light, revealing an identical jet black ring. "Yi!" Nangong Wan couldn't help but yelp in surprise. Han Li brought the two rings together and felt that they both possess a similar absence of qi. He then placed both of the rings back in the box before placing it into his storage pouch. Nangong Wan sweetly smiled and said nothing else as her mind began to wander. Then, paying no further attention to the large pile of items, she walked towards her Senior Martial Sister. With a flash of red light glowing from her hand, Nangong Wan nimbly touched her Senior Martial Sister's head before closing her eyes in silence. When Han Li saw this, he silently walked over with a faint smile on his face. A short moment later, Nangong Wan opened her eyes and raised her hand, revealing the Blood Devil Sword in her grasp. Nangong Wan glanced at the sword for only a moment before tossing the devilish artifact to Han Li. "This devilish artifact is mighty and proves to be a great threat against us, so it'd be best to take it with us. While I am incapable of using this item, you are able to restrain this treasure with your golden lightning. Let us leave it in your hands." Although Han Li didn't know the full details of the Blood Devil Sword, he did know of its devilish qi backlash. He quickly put it away, not wishing for Nangong Wan to use such a dangerous devilish artifact. As for the other items such as the Light Stars's mirror and her other treasures, Nangong Wan had no intention of taking them. It seemed she wished to save her Senior Martial Sister a bit of face. Not to mention that the Light Stars's mirror was made famous while in this woman's possession. If others were to discover that it had been taken, it would cause no end of problems. At that moment, Nangong Wan held the restriction talisman in her hand and gently squeezed it. In a flicker of red light, it released a thread of inky black qi before fading away into nothingness. In high spirits from dissolving the restriction, Nangong Wan sweetly smiled. "The heart-containing restriction is already dissolved. But before we go, I have to leave a message behind for my Senior Martial Sister." Han Li didn't raise any opposition to her. Nangong Wan then took out a white jade slip and gracefully placed it against her forehead. The jade slip sparkled with a series of light before Nangong Wan's spiritual sense began to leave a message behind in the jade slip. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, she placed the jade slip on the pile of remaining items on the floor. She then placed them all in the icy woman's storage pouch and put it back on the icy woman's waist. Nangong Wan smiled to Han Li with a trace of bashfulness. "Let us go. Senior Martial Sister is still under effects of my divine incarnation light. It'll take her more than just a day for her to break free." When Han Li saw Nangong Wan's gentle expression, his heart began to stir. He gently pulled her close to him and they flew out the hall in a streak of light. On a small nameless mountain on the border of the state of Beiliang, Nangong Wan stood underneath an ancient tree and frowned. "What do you mean? Why would you have me go ahead alone to the Drifting Cloud sect?" Han Li stood shoulder to shoulder with Nangong Wan. He slowly said, "My concubine and my senior martial brother Liu have still remained in Soaring Heaven City for some reason. I reckon it likely has to do with the Mulan invasion. Since the two are related to me, I cannot go back on my own. I have no choice but to check up on them. Nangong Wan glanced at Han Li with a displeased expression and said, "Since that is the case, I'll go with you."
"Why must I leave on my own?"
"Wan, you're a masked moon sect nascent soul cultivator. There will be many high-grade cultivators in the 9 Nations Union that will recognize you. Although I already taught you the appearance exchange technique, those possessing greater cultivation than you will have a chance of seeing through your disguise. It'd be best for you to head back to the Drifting Cloud sect first." Nangong Wan wrinkled her nose and worriedly said, "But you've already offended our masked moon sect and the Flowing Mind sect. I feel uneasy that you're still heading to Soaring Heaven City." Han Li chuckled and said, "Don't worry. It's not like you haven't seen what I'm capable of. Perhaps there are plenty of people with greater cultivation than mine in the Heavenly South, but there are sparsely few that are able to trap and kill me. Moreover, I am an elder of the Drifting Cloud sect. And with the full brunt of Mulan invasion bearing down upon the 9 Nations Union, they won't dare to meddle. Besides, I reckon your senior martial sister will have followed what you've suggested to excuse your disappearance. Otherwise, her dealings with Wei Wuya will turn for the worse. There is hardly anything to worry about. Since you're insistent, I won't block you, but you'd best take care of yourself. So that you're a bit more safe, I'll hand this treasure over to you." Seeing that Han Li had made up his mind, she said little else and slapped her storage pouch. She then calmly handed an embroidered scarf over to Han Li. Han Li felt a strange spiritual chi from the scarf and curiously asked, "What is this?" Nangong Wan warmly explained, "This is a nameless ancient treasure that I unintentionally happened across while I was traveling. It is extremely convenient to use and will move in accordance to your thoughts. You might encounter danger on your trip. I will feel less worried if you have it by your side." Han Li grew silent and stared at Nangong Wan's fluid eyes for a long while before seeing her faintly blush. He then took the item with a smile and carefully put it away. When Nangong Wan saw this, she also wore a faint smile. Soon, something else came to mind and she took out a sparkling red jade pendant. "This fire-repelling ornament is a token I often carry around. Although I dislike being tied down with external affairs, there was a time where I had taken in a few in-name disciples out of a passing interest. Although they recognized me as their master, they weren't masked moon sect disciples. There are 2 that have currently opened a shop in Soaring Heaven City. If you are in need of assistance, hand over this token to them, and they will follow your instructions." She then whispered the names of these 2 disciples. Han Li felt a trace of warmth and sentiment and silently committed the names to memory. It had been a while since he experienced someone else's concern. A month later, Han Li found himself in the wilderness outside Soaring Heaven City. He glanced at the huge city from a distance in silence. After he and Nangong Wan reluctantly parted, he made his way directly to the state of Yu. Along the way, he heard from a few passing cultivators that war had already begun on the borders of the state of Fengyuan and Yu. The outcome, the main forces of the 9 Nations Union had suffered vast losses 3 times in a row. They had no choice but to rely on many grand spell formations to difficultly protect their vital strategic locations. The 9 Nations Union were clearly losing. When Han Li heard this, he frowned, but it was unfortunate that no one knew of the specific details, let alone the reason for such vast defeats. He could only continue on his way. After he entered the state of Yu, he managed to acquire more detailed news. The Mulan spell warriors seemed to have found several huge savage beasts. The 9 Nations Union were caught unprepared by the attack, resulting in their repeated losses. This had greatly shocked Han Li when he heard this and hastened on his way to Soaring Heaven City. Although Soaring Heaven City had already removed their restrictions of flight, they had already activated a majority of the restrictions for the Greater Light Extinguishing Formation. Strange, nearly indiscernible fluctuations filled the air. It appeared as if the cultivators in the city were already preparing for war. After taking a glance at it, Han Li calmly flew to the city's front gate. There were 8 cultivators guarding the gate. Apart from a core formation elder, the rest were foundation establishment cultivators. When they saw Han Li approach them, the core formation cultivator thought to interrogate him. But after his spiritual sense swept past Han Li, he wore great shock on his face. Once the light surrounding Han Li's figure faded away, the old man respectfully saluted him. "Welcome, senior. Have you arrived to participate in the treaties meeting? May I ask for your esteemed name?" "I'm afraid I must register your name in accordance to the rules." Han Li's mind stirred and expressionlessly asked, "Treaties meeting? What meeting?" After a moment of surprise, the old man asked, "Senior, isn't he here to participate in the treaties meeting? Could it be that Senior is a vagrant cultivator?" No, I am a cultivator of the Heavenly Tao Alliance. The old man carefully explained, because of the overbearing assault of the Mulan, our 9 nations union have found it difficult to block them. As such, there has been a treaties meeting being held with the other powers. Since Senior is a cultivator from the Heavenly Tao Alliance, so long as he states his name and sect, he can enter the city. Han Li's eyes flickered and he said, I am the Drifting Cloud Sect S Han Li. He inwardly scowled. It appeared this trip wouldn't prove as simple as he imagined. The old man didn't have the slightest intention of validating Han Li's name, and he hastily stood to the side and allowed Han Li into the city. Han Li nodded his head and he calmly entered the city. There were far fewer cultivators on the streets of Soaring Heaven City compared to when the trade fair was taking place. Furthermore, all of them wore worried expressions. It seems the news of the losing war had reached their ears. Han Li directly flew towards his previous residence. If Mu Peiling and Senior Marshal Brother Liu still hadn't left the city, they should be there. Not long after, Han Li arrived before the building and used his spiritual sense to search for any auras. He found a weaker spiritual chi fluctuation on the 2nd floor. It should belong to Mu Peiling. Han Li faintly smiled and silently opened the restriction before entering the pavilion. Mu Peiling couldn't help but reveal delight upon seeing him. My lord, you've returned. Han Li sighed and helplessly said, why is it that you and Senior Marshal Brother Liu haven't left as we discussed? I might not returned. He then took a glance at Mu Peiling and smiled, but I didn't think that you'd actually break through your bottleneck so quickly. Congratulations on entering mid-foundation establishment stage. I broke through by chance half a month ago thanks to the medicine pills my lord has given me. It wouldn't have been the case otherwise. Mu Peiling spoke with great excitement and appeared all the more beautiful for it. Han Li felt his mind shake and calmed down once he stroked his nose. Han Li then casually asked, does your prolonged stay with Senior Marshal Brother Liu in Soaring Heaven City have to do with the spell warriors? Mu Peiling bit her lip and carefully said, my lord already guessed it. Senior Liu and I planned on returning once the trade fair ended, but who could thought that news of the spell warrior invasion had spread before the trade fair concluded. As a Heavenly Tao Alliance nascent soul cultivator, he had no choice but to remain and negotiate a plan with the other powers. I also remained behind as a result. In that case, I can't blame you. But where is Senior Marshal Brother Liu? Han Li suddenly wore an odd expression when he interrupted himself. Mu Peiling was startled by this sudden stop. Before she realized what Han Li intended, she suddenly heard a young man's voice from outside the building. Fellow Daoist Mu, are you there? I am Bai Shu Jun. I wish to discuss something with you. After Han Li swept his spiritual sense past him, he discovered a core formation youth with a scholarly appearance that was standing outside the building's restrictions. Han Li pensively asked, who is this? It seems you've made friends. In the instant Mu Peiling heard the man's voice, his face instantly paled. She hastily explained, Lord, please don't misunderstand. This person is a disciple of a Heaven Peak sect elder. We had unintentionally met a few days ago and he had been bothering me ceaselessly ever since. I've already said that I am your concubine, but this person has bothered me ever since. I'll drive him away right now. Han Li raised his brow and asked, so it was like that? Does Senior Marshal Brother Liu know of this? Mu Peiling was relieved that Han Li wasn't angry and replied with a sigh of relief, I've already spoke to Senior Liu of this matter, but Senior Liu seemed to recognize this elder of the Heaven Peak sect. He even seemed somewhat fearful of him. For the time being, he's left me to fend for myself with regards to his matter. He's been waiting for Lord to return before dealing with this matter. After a moment of silence, Han Li coldly smiled, oh. Isn't he the Heaven Peak sect one of the 4 great sects of the Righteous Tao Alliance? It is no wonder why Senior Marshal Brother Liu was so careful in handling this matter. However, this meager core formation cultivator must be quite brave to act so imprudently. Follow me out. Let us see what this junior intends to do. Mu Peiling respectfully replied, as you command, master. At that moment, Han Li wordlessly climbed down to the ground floor with Mu Peiling closely following after her. Fellow Daoist Mu, you finally This senior is, when the youth named Bai Shu Jun saw someone leaving the building, he originally believed it to be the woman he fancied. But when he saw Han Li with his profound cultivation, his expression vastly changed. At that moment, Mu Peiling followed behind Han Li and stood closely behind him. When the youth saw this, his expression wavered several times. Han Li's expression grew sullen and he spoke bluntly to the youth, you are a disciple of the Heaven Peak sect. Displaying an unordinary guile, he regained his calm after only a moment even as he faced a nascent soul cultivator like Han Li. He then spoke with a courteous tone, "That's right. This junior is a disciple of the Heaven Peak sect Elder Liu. Could it be that you are Senior Han? Speak.
What are your intentions in coming here?
Why is it that you bother my concubine without end? You should have some other purpose in performing such a brainless task." Han Li's harsh tone had caused a trace of astonishment to appear from Mu Peiling's face. Bai Shujun smiled and eloquently said, "Senior is wise. In truth, my master wishes to meet you, but since there has been no news of Senior Han, Junior has done this. However, I am truly fond of fellow Daoist Mu. If Senior would agree to accommodate me, I wouldn't be able to thank you enough."
Can't thank me enough?
What use is your gratitude? Don't get caught up in your dreams. I have no such habit of giving my own concubines to others. I also have no connection with your Heaven Peak sect, so why is it that you've come to find me? Han Li narrowed his eyes and glanced in an empty area. After squinting his eyes, he wore a weird smile and suddenly released an astonishing spiritual pressure from his body. Bai Shujun recoiled several steps with a greatly alarmed expression. Bearing a pressure of what seemed to be a huge mountain, his legs folded and he fell to a half kneel. He hastily attempted to resist, but after his body trembled several times, his knees still remained unsteady. As he knelt, a white silhouette suddenly appeared in front of Bai Shujun. He gently patted Bai Shujun's shoulder and suddenly relieved him of the pressure, allowing him to stand once more. The white silhouette was a white-robed old man with light grey hair and a friendly face. As Han Li examined him, the old man smiled at him and said, "Fellow Daoist Han, please don't be angry. My disciple has been doing this on my command. How could I meet you otherwise?" When Han Li saw the old man, the pressure emitting from his body vanished and his expression became calm once more as if it had never happened. "Who is your esteemed self? And why do you wish to see me? If I remember correctly, this will be the first time I ever made contact with you and your sect. He. This old man goes by the name of Liu Weiying and is an elder of the Heaven Peak sect. As for why I wish to see you, this is not a convenient place to speak of it. If fellow Daoist wishes to know why, let us meet later tonight. At that time, fellow Daoist will surely come to know the details." Showing not the slightest anger, he waved his hand and tossed a green jade slip he had already prepared to Han Li. Han Li expressionlessly waved his arm and caught the jade slip in an azure mist. After sinking his spiritual sense into the jade slip, he found the details of a location and thought to ask about it, but when he raised his head, the old man had already saluted him and was leading Bai Shujun away. Han Li frowned. He acted rather mysteriously, but they seemed to misunderstand that Han Li had been hiding in Soaring Heaven City all this time. Han Li rubbed his chin and felt this matter to be somewhat unclear. As such, he left the matter alone for now and brought Mu Peiling back into their residence. After Han Li entered the pavilion, he calmly asked, "Where is Senior Marshal Brother Liu currently?" It was as if he had thrown the recent matter to the back of his mind. "I heard that the war situation was dire and Senior Liu went to discuss a countermeasure with the other powers." Han Li interestedly asked, "Where are they having this discussion?" "It is at Soaring Heaven City's official hall. I heard that only nascent soul cultivates affiliated with a superpower are allowed to attend. Does my lord wish to go take a look?" The official hall. Han Li recalled a huge palace hall at the center of the city that was heavily covered in restrictions. "All right, I do wish to see how the matters of spell warriors are being handled. Wait here and don't go out without a reason." With his mind set, he departed to where his senior marshal Brother Liu was located. The official hall was the towering building built at the center of the city and was extremely noticeable. Apart from matters concerning the life or death of the Nine Nations Union, it was hardly ever used. But now that the Mulan had begun another assault since their ceasefire 100 years ago, the upper echelon of the Nine Nations Union showed no hesitation in opening this hall and convening with cultivators of other powers. After all, with the overbearing invasion of the Mulan spell warriors, it would be extremely difficult for the Nine Nations Union to defend against them alone. When Han Li arrived in front of the official hall, a guard standing at the front noticed Han Li's cultivation and asked for his name before reporting it to his superior. Soon, Han Li was granted permission and a cultivator respectfully led him inside the official hall. There couldn't be said to be many nascent soul cultivators in the meeting, only over a dozen, far fewer than Han Li had imagined. However, Han Li understood that despite the large number of nascent soul cultivators that had gathered at Soaring Heaven City, there was no need for each of them to personally attend. They merely had their Power-S representatives stand in their place. As for Senior Marshal Brother Liu, he was currently sitting on a chair to the left. He smiled when he caught sight of Han Li. Closely sitting beside him was the child fire dragon. Apart from the yellow-robed old man, Han Li found the others to be unfamiliar. After taking 2 glances at the yellow-robed old man, he couldn't help but inwardly sigh. This old man was martial ancestor Ling Hu of Yellow Maple Valley,